Um, Welcome everyone to, thank you for our partner TT Nick for that presentation on the process being followed by schools and education institutions to set up. And now let's move on to our second panel for today. I'm Tracy Hackshaw. I'm the moderator for this session. I'm Chief Executive for TFH and Associates, and also have been involved with the TT Map for some time. The session that we're going to go into now is titled Digital Entrepreneurship. And what we're doing today is trying to grapple with what's been happening, as we are, I think, throughout the entire TTIGF over the last 12 months. What we've seen as Trinidad and Tobago has moved forward with our, recovery efforts as a result of the pandemic. We also are dealing with the impacts and fallout. They've seen what we would call to be a new class of entrepreneur, digital entrepreneur that has emerged during this, certainly the last 12 months. It's been happening for some time, but it's been accelerated over the last 12 months. And there've been several long gestating opportunities in what we call digital economy that have now come to the fore. We've seen, pockets of innovation and entrepreneurship emerging in various areas, marketplaces, on social media, in certain service industries, like, for example, animation, that we'll hear about today, I'm sure. We've seen emergence of delivery services and that delivery economy emerging. We've seen a greater take-up of e-commerce to a large extent. Payment solutions starting to make their voices heard. We've seen people like WePay and others step up to the plate and become more prominent in the game. But at the same time, as we've seen this, we do need to understand that this is just, a few of the opportunities that currently exist. And today we're looking to discuss how we can, accelerate and catalyze this new emerging thrust of digital entrepreneurship and growing the local digital economy. And today we're going to have our very esteemed panel confront and discuss the realities that confront the digital entrepreneur today, and look at how the digital economy can grow further. And I hope today we're not going to simply rehash what we already know, but we're going to find a way to reorient the conversation towards one that is solution-oriented, not problem-based, and move beyond talk and maybe move to some sort of concrete action plan in doing so. And let me take the opportunity to introduce our panel today. So I will do this by quickly giving a brief of each of the panelists in order that I have on my sheet. We have Mr. Keron Rose. He is mobile expert and founder of Droid Island. Keron is an online business educator who works with Caribbean entrepreneurs and corporate clients on building their businesses online so that they can participate in the global economy. He is the creator and host of the web show, The Digital Age, which features Caribbean companies and experts who have created or mastered the platforms and tools we use to conduct our online businesses. He is also the owner and tech blogger behind Droid Island, an online resource center to learn about the Caribbean smartphone industry. Mr. Rose's goal is to be an agent of change in the Caribbean and to help entrepreneurs and businesses navigate the digital age. Welcome, Keron. Thank you for joining us today. Next up on my list, this is in no particular order. We have Agyei Archer. I hope I got that right. Yes, excellent. Thank you, Agyei. Agyei Archer is he is an independent design director and co-founder and CEO of one of the new startups that I mentioned called Unqueue. Agyei is a multidisciplinary designer and art director from Trinidad and Tobago, focusing on work that integrates graphic design for business, typeface design, and programming. He studied visual communications at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Camille may know him, and typeface design at the Cooper Union. Agyei has 12 years experience in creating brand identities, websites, digital products, publications, and event invites, all with a focus on solutions that integrate meaningfully, considered graphics, strong typography, and nimble, well-written code. He recently co-founded Unqueue, a mobile app designed to improve retail experiences in the Caribbean by making digital commerce and sales more accessible and convenient. Past clients include Google, the Rhode Island School of Design, Governor of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Caribbean Mental Health Foundation. Welcome, Agyei. Good to see you today. And this is not a manual. We now have very happy to introduce two very powerful ladies to address us today. Camille Salvon Abraham, one of my good colleagues, is the program coordinator for animation studies at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Camille has a Bachelor of Arts in Media and Communication with specialization in animation from Goldsmiths University of London. She is a founding director of the NGO Anime Caribe Animation Festival, which is celebrating its 19th year. She recently served as chairman of Film TT under the Ministry of Trade and Industry, Governor of Trinidad and Tobago. Together with business partner Jason Lindsay, they created the first Caribbean outsourcing animation studio, Full Circle Animation Studio in Trinidad, creating work for international studios around the world. She has coined her interpretation of the work she undertakes as digital activism, for just as the output of the computer is intangible and cannot be placed on a shelf, so does the inspiration she provokes hide in the emotional, social, and entrepreneurial outcomes of her interventions. In 2016, she spent a month in Jamaica for an intervention product called New Path, which used animation in prisons, funding by the OAS, US Department of Public Security in Washington, D.C. With over 20 years in the animation digital media industry, Camille now uses the hero's journey to rewrite the script that has kept others outside of the playing field, both in film industry and also the play of life. Awards include the Royal Television Society Students Award 2000 from London, Caribbean Tales and Innovation Animation in the Caribbean Award, Toronto, Canada, the Trinidad and Tobago Film Festival Pioneering Film Award 2014, and she was shortlisted for the Commonwealth Foundation Award for Women in Business. She currently runs an NGO in collaboration with CARICOM called the Shift Project, which is an intervention product using digital technology to bring at-risk teens in the 21st century. Camille, welcome, and we're very proud to have someone like you on our panel. And last but certainly by no means least, a colleague of mine, Roxanne Colthrust, serial entrepreneur and managing director of Shop Caribe, among many others. Roxanne is a digital entrepreneur who has been involved in communications, animation, tourism, and e-commerce. Over the last 20 years, she has witnessed the growth and development of digital economies with strategy-level involvement in the animation sector as a co-director, actually, of the very same Anime Caribe Festival I just mentioned. She has worked alongside a dynamic team at Web Development and Integrated Communication Studio. Many of you may be aware of this company called Site Factory, to bring multiple corporate and private sector websites into reality. In 2016, she partnered with her husband and co-director, Philip Colthrust, who I actually went to school with, to develop the tourism booking platform, Destination Trinidad and Tobago, destinationtnt.com, which has amassed more than 500,000 visitors per year. In 2020, she became the managing director of shopcaribe.com, the ultimate marketplace for Caribbean-made products, with currently more than 150 vendors and 2,000 products on that platform. Roxanne, welcome, and welcome to all of our entrepreneurs today. And as I hope that we'll begin with our first question, and I'm going to pose it as an open question to our panelists. What can we do in Trinidad and Tobago to encourage a greater take-up of digital entrepreneurship? And maybe what I can do is start in the reverse order in which I began with the introductions. Maybe I can ask Roxanne to open the discussion. Roxanne?
Yeah, that was a neat trick, Tracy. Neat trick. Last up, first in, right? Well, thank you so much for having me on the panel this morning. And every time I speak, I just want to take a moment and ask for us to remember those persons who have succumbed to the coronavirus, and a moment of respect and positive thoughts for the brave efforts and energies of the healthcare workers. They're the ones out there holding the door for us. They're the ones who are, keeping this thing at bay. So I always just spend just a little moment. Thank you. So in terms of, how can we encourage a greater uptake of digital entrepreneurship? I've been seeing it growing over the last 20 years. You have all sorts of minds, some fantastic minds out there now who are coming up with some fantastic projects. And I feel that how can we encourage a greater take-up? It's really about creating an enabling environment. It's really about encouraging that development. It's about collaboration as well. Sometimes we don't collaborate enough. Sometimes we just kind of go out there and do things on our own. But you know what? You always have to find those who've gone before. At the time when we started doing web development in Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean and then worldwide, we were one of the few web development companies. Now, fast forward 20 years, you have, young business people calling themselves technologists, so they're doing similar things. What are they doing? They're embracing technology. They are finding a way to work with technology. And that's a fantastic thing. I think digital entrepreneurship is the way to go. We are on the cusp of something phenomenal. And so we have to find ways that uptake comes from collaboration. That uptake comes from, reaching out and creating an enabling environment. I'm seeing some interesting things in Trinidad and Tobago. There are movements towards, giving tax breaks for digital economy, digital companies, for companies that are developing bits of technology. So that's creating the enabling environment. What we need to do now is to fast forward and make sure that those opportunities are real, that I can really call someone at the VAT office and say, hey, here are my earnings for 2020. Is it going to be applied as a thing? Is it going to be applied as an overall, I think they say there's a clearance of a certain amount. So we need to just, the enabling environments are there, but we need to now push them forward to make them operational. And that's the key thing that's going to help us to move forward.
Thank you very much, Roxanne. That's an excellent, I think, a nice, optimistic and broad brush take on this. Camille, using the same order that I just started with, perhaps maybe you may want to zero in a little further on your understanding of what we need to do in this country to encourage a greater uptake, and maybe what you can do as well is bring some of your own experiences to bear on this response to the question.
Sure. So I can't move forward until I talk about your beard, Tracy. I've never seen that, and you look fantastic with that beard. Okay, I just needed to put that in. So I mean, everything that Roxanne said, of course, is very relevant. But one of the main things I think that needs to be recognized is that digital entrepreneurship, Tracy, as you so nicely put it, is new. And this may sound, okay, that don't make any sense, but it is new. And the reason why it's new, it's because it's exponential. It's constantly changing now. So it's the future is that this technology that is affiliated to entrepreneurship will almost always be new. So we always have to be, trying to find solutions and be open to new things, right? So that's one of the first things. And because it's new, there's often a young intake with digital entrepreneurs, right? So which means that there's a certain amount of hand-holding that needs to happen. Whether we like it or not, there's a certain amount of hand-holding. And I always compare it to the oil industry when the oil industry way back first started. Institutions or the state didn't build oil refineries and then say, okay, you all figure it out. No, there was a long-term investment in that new industry way back then. So therefore, the same thing needs to happen with digital entrepreneurship. We need that kind of support needs to continue. So there's a certain amount of hand-holding. The other thing is that we also need to, when it comes to institutions that are investing, you know, whether it be state or businesses, often what happens is that we have first phase funding or first phase investment, and then it ends. And that consistency makes a huge difference, because then you'd see these digital products go from prototype, go from ideation to prototype into becoming monetized. And often that full 3-phase or whatever 4-phase support is not there. And I think we need to kind of really look at that too. The other thing I think is important is that we need to understand that this is fluid. We have a fluid industry. It changes constantly. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be on the education side of things. Now, with the education side of things, it's a sort of a double-edged sword, because you're dealing with academia that is very, very static, right? And very much based on you know, those structures. And this particular area is very, very fluid. So often, I am in that space where I'm frustrated in my own academia. Okay, so the important, to me, one of the most important things when it comes to supporting entrepreneurship and digital entrepreneurs is that we start from the education side of things. We start to look at giving students tools that would allow them to be innovative, that would allow them to test, that would allow them to fail and fix, right? That would allow them to apply new technology to new ideas. And of course, this has impacted a lot on the program at UTT because we've approached the program over the past 15 years as being fluid, as being open. Things will change. And that came from the support from above, whereby we were given the opportunity to create a program that was very fluid, even before COVID happened, right? So now you find and I'll just end quickly with this. Now you find the programs that we are building at the BFA. We now have a BFA in Digital Media Studies. In there is actual programs or courses that are part of a workspace, so that the student is thrown into a studio. The student is thrown into a situation where they have to use technology and they have to solve things with technology. So with that, that's kind of where I see where we're going now.
Thank you, Camille. And I think what I'm going to ask you to do at some point during this session is, you and I had worked in the recent past on the Tamina project, and maybe what you could do is bring a little bit of that into the discussion as we go to see what's possible there. But you did mention that at UTT there was a new breed of student that would be emerging. And I think that segues nicely into Agyei's recent thrust as a digital entrepreneur. He's a graduate of UTT, as he has indicated. Agyei, maybe you could jump in as an entrepreneur, a recent digital entrepreneur, if you want to call yourself that.
I'm a dropout of UTT.
Well, we can
that's fluid.
that well.
That's fluid.
Just to be mad clear about how it is, yeah. Like I left school so that I could continue working. But
that's one way. Yeah, let's do it. Go ahead.
I would say that I'm sorry to be the not voice of huge positivity, but I'm sure that's why I'm here anyway. I think that when I think about the uptake or the whatever of digital entrepreneurship in Trinidad, it starts at the infrastructure level. I think that if we start talking about entrepreneurship, we have to talk about money. And if we're talking about money, we have to talk about the people that manage money and manage the processes around money. Like, until we overhaul banking across the board, digital entrepreneurship will be a challenge. And the challenge with overhauling banking is not a technical one, it's an infrastructural one, because the people who are, for example, in charge of those systems will have to get fired for us to move forward. Like, there's going to need to be a new guard in terms of like e-commerce. And what are you going to do? This guy was working at the board of, for example, Royal Bank or whatever for 50 years. Is he going to get fired so that we can have an online banking API? He would have to be. He was going to have to walk away from his stock options. He's going to have to walk away from his benefits. And the reality is that there is no incentive for him to do that. And I think that that is the challenge. The challenge is that infrastructurally, there is no actual reason for the banks to give like two hoots about e-commerce in the Caribbean, because as far as they're concerned, the system that they have right now works, and it has worked, and it will continue to work in their favor. Opening up industry and commerce digitally means that you are leveling the playing field in a way that I don't know that a lot of our established systems are quite ready for. I don't think that the challenges that we have, I think that the points that Roxanne brought up about enabling are very true and they're very right. But I do also think that the enabling, we have to talk about who's doing the enabling and who's responsible for the enabling. And when we talk about that, the conversation has to come down to the infrastructure. So it has to be a central bank conversation and a private bank conversation. Like that has to start there. And it's not that we don't have the resources or the infrastructure or the minds locally to do that. The challenge is just that somebody has to get fired. And unfortunately, nobody wants to walk away from their high-paying job. And a lot of the people who are in charge of these systems have been in a position of what I would call relative comfort. You know, we're talking about IT managers who've been in a job for 15 years. Are you really going to learn the infrastructure around a whole new API? Like, are you going to do that? Because you're going to have to lose your job, unfortunately. And I think that the challenge that we have is, on one hand, the infrastructure isn't set up in such a way that there's this fluid transition. I think that in other economies, for example, I think we love to model the US economy around startup culture. And I think that it's a flawed position to take because we don't have the populations to support those business models. But I also think that something that we can take away from the American startup culture is that a lot of those companies that we see as luminous figures inside of their digital space were companies started by people who had to kind of figure it out on their own. And they figured it out on their own because they had the basic infrastructure in their hands. I don't think that we need to mentor people to become digital entrepreneurs. I think we just need to give them the space to do it. I think that we have enough people who are, one, in need, two, smart and resourceful, and also see a problem that they can fix. But the challenge, again, is that when my friends come to tell me that, hey, let's start a product, let's start a service, the first question is, how are we going to make money? How are we going to pay our suppliers? And the question comes down to, like, fundamentally, who has access to the banking system? I'm really lucky. I work for Google. I'm able to get paid in like US dollars. If I didn't have US dollars specifically, I wouldn't have been able to bootstrap Unqueue. Like, there would be no Unqueue without that, you know? And I think that that is a very basic problem that we have, because when I have to think about, for example, like e-commerce fulfillment, our best bet is WePay, right? Like, technically speaking, like, we can use First Atlantic Commerce, but we need to like literally hire a whole, like, we need to go in time and like find a developer from 10 years ago who understands a system that is broken and broken on purpose, right? But then we think about WePay. WePay is great. WePay has bridged a huge gap, but at the end of the day, WePay is likely gonna like plateau on innovation. I still don't have immediate refunds. You know what I mean? And that is largely just because of the infrastructure, because if the infrastructure was set up differently, we wouldn't be dependent on First Atlantic Commerce for our banking, and First Atlantic Commerce wouldn't get to like condescend to us with their technological platforms, because the reality is that we are so fixed in what we're doing that because when we were launching Unqueue, we went to every bank, hey guys, we would like to do online payments properly. Could we build the API for you? Everybody said no. And it's not that we weren't able to do PCI compliance or anything like that. We just wanted, honestly, to make our lives easier. But the honest reality is that there isn't that setup. And the convenience around that setup is more than just being nice to young people and putting them in a good class and, you know, patting their backs and encouraging them. It really comes down to the infrastructure, and the infrastructure is not there. It's like flatly not there. Like, the best that we can do is kind of bad right now, in my opinion. So I think that to improve digital take-up, we need to fire some people, and we definitely need to overhaul some of our technological standards at the base level. But the base level is not WePay, or it's not any of our providers. It's at the banking and central banking level.
All right, Agyei, I'm wondering if you want to be honest about your thoughts today, or you're just going...
No, I'm going to hold back a little bit.
Yeah, that's... Let's move on to another individual who has been very vocal about this very same topic in his blogs and various interventions on social media, and in his online learning platform, Digital Age, Mr. Keron Rose. Keron, maybe what we could do is respond to what Agyei has been pointing out there, and what are your thoughts on this plateauing of the infrastructure and what we need to do? Keron?
So I agree with Agyei. I think he's hit several nails on the head. And I mean, that overhaul isn't going to happen overnight. It is going to take a few dominoes to fall in order for us to really get this right. So I agree with him largely. What I would say is that we still have enough to keep things simple. So one of the things that I try to preach from a digital entrepreneurship perspective is for people to just start learning the basics, start learning some digital skills, so that even if you are not trying to build the next Unqueue or build the next WePay, you could at least, develop a digital skill like, web development, copywriting, develop a digital skill that will allow you to at least earn additional revenue. And we have so many global freelance platforms. We have enough infrastructure to be able to get paid online and get clients from around the world. So even just from a perspective of keeping it simple, if it's somebody who has a 9-to-5, who is looking to just earn additional revenue, learning some digital skills right now would go a long way. And to be honest, the earnings that you could get from some of these, from a lot of these digital skills may be able to replace and far surpass what you're getting paid at a 9-to-5. For me, just some of the basic things that I do, most of my clients are not in Trinidad. And I don't have an issue getting paid because you have a WePay. You could still use PayPal, even though PayPal only works in a limited capacity here. It is still an option for us to be able to use. So like getting paid isn't really an issue. The biggest issue for me is a lack of education. Most people don't know what exactly is possible, right? So they're not going to be quick to think, let me learn how to do email marketing and then go tap into a resource like LinkedIn and pull in some clients from LinkedIn so I could start to do email marketing for people or become a virtual assistant and do that for people. And don't just limit yourself to Trinidad and Tobago, because the reality is that we're still growing. A lot of these companies, some of the biggest companies in Trinidad and Tobago, still don't know what they don't know, and are outsourcing stuff to people that they themselves don't know what they don't know. So if you can develop your own skill sets and you can start tapping into the social media platforms and the global networks, you can start to generate your own client list from people outside of the country, outside of the Caribbean. So you're not limiting yourself to just one economy. When people are saying Trinidad economy is bad, I'm sure the majority of the panel on this, the majority of the people on this panel are tapping into clients outside of Trinidad. So I'm not feeling the pinch because half my clients are not in the country, right? So this is the lack of education. What we need is more people to speak about their experiences from their successes and their failures, putting that information out there and just start to showcase to people what is possible, even from the most basic levels, allowing people to see what we can do even within our broken system. That would at least give people the leg up to at least survive until, who knows, Agyei, maybe, in 2 years, somebody does get fired and the system starts to fix itself. But until then, there is still a lot that we can do even within this system. And that's one of the things that I want to impress upon people right now. Jump on Google high income digital skills, jump on any one of these platforms online to learn these skills. You're not limited to UE. You're not limited to you because they're not even going to be teaching you the latest in digital trends and digital skills. You can learn from so many platforms online, get certified, and apply your skills and trade online and still earn money without a problem.
Thank you very much, Keron. And I think that's one of the hopes I had coming from this panel, that we're going to move beyond just talking and certainly move to the actions that we can take, concrete actions. And I think that issue of digital skills and cracking on that, there are many free, paid, hybrid platforms that are there right now that, just Google them, quite literally. You have to go through them today. And of course, Keron himself has his own platform that you can look at. So I want to make this a very interactive session, as I indicated to our panelists. I have a few questions that I wanted to bring up, but I'm just wondering right now if we could invite anyone who may want to jump in. I believe you can unmute yourself. I'm not too sure. If there's any questions coming in, please raise your hand and maybe we could address it at this point in time, given that each panelist has had a point they've raised already. Let me see, there's nothing coming up at this point. Could anyone help and identify if there are any questions coming in? Doesn't seem so. And until that happens, let me just bring up my own questions. So I think this could be quite challenging for others to answer. In terms of internet governance and multi-stakeholderism, which is what we discussed yesterday. And by that I mean all the stakeholders getting together, so government, private sector, civil society, academia, technical. What do you think can be done from a stakeholder position to get this digital economy going and to drive entrepreneurship beyond the 10 or 20 or 30 or whatever number that is currently there? It's still not enough to move forward. I would like to hear some thoughts on that, and maybe without having to go in order, I can ask, maybe from the panel wants to jump in and respond to that at this point.
I could.
Yes, Agyei, go ahead.
I think that I mean, it does come back to the same thing I was saying before, but like the government stakeholder in a country like Trinidad, where everything is administrated by the government, it's like they're the most important one. Like until there is some kind of, I suppose the word is decentralized, but let's not use decentralized next to central bank. But until there is some kind of a standard around, okay, FCB and Republic need to send money to each other. How does that happen digitally? Unless that doesn't happen with an ACH, which is just a clearinghouse, unless we're able to move past that, there is no basis, in my opinion anyway, for much other involvement. Because like Keron made a really good point, in my opinion, just now about like building up your own skills. So like that is a kind of entrepreneurship as well, right? But if we talk about like contributing to like the local GDP, and we're talking about like making money inside of Trinidad, that is not a Forex conversation. Like that is about a generating TT in TT kind of conversation. And if the people who are supposed to be very smart are skilling themselves up on languages and technologies and platforms, for example, that have this international market value, what's going to happen, and what I know happens, because I have a lot of friends who work for very high profile companies, also Trinidad, so they have like really good salaries, but they are doing what I would call high-end top tier development work. They aren't doing that in Trinidad because there isn't an economy around it. And until there is an economy around it, everybody who gets really good at these technological infrastructure that can move us forward is going to leave or work for somewhere else, just like Keron recommended, which I think if I have to place the options of either work in Trinidad and fight up, or get a job somewhere else where somebody identifies my skills quickly and pays me right for it, I'm gonna pick that second one every single time, right? But I think that as a stakeholder, the government has, I think like their mandate really should be around the type of facilitation that there just isn't the conversation for right now. And that facilitation is a legal, it's like legal / infrastructural, but largely technological, because I think that we've had conversations with people from the central bank before, and the question was always, how are you going to make this secure? And then we tell them how we're going to make it secure. But then like that's not enough, right? Because what that means is that the guy who we just spoke to has to go research what we just said, because he doesn't know about it either. And like it comes back down to like the governmental, like until he says yes to it, we're not going to be able to transfer money from one bank to another seamlessly. That's not going to happen. We're not going to have things like a Cash App. You know, WePay is going to be as well as we can do. And I think that that's really just because as a stakeholder, the government's investment is obviously in the optics of digital entrepreneurship. And I think that the optics of digital entrepreneurship are really great when you think about economies where that kind of scale can work. But in Trinidad, where there likely won't be a Steve Jobs coming out to Trinidad, we're not going to make Steve Jobs money. You know, so like that objective is not in the picture anymore. So what that also means is that at the governmental level, the investment is purely about the optics. It's not actually about the GDP. I don't think that people are thinking about the GDP. I think that our government thinks that we should get onto tech for the same reason that the government has a Facebook page, because they should, right? But I don't think that it has anything to do with an actual investment in the infrastructure. And I think that until we move past the very optical investment that we have right now, which is we are going to talk about e-money and we're going to put E before everything, until we move past putting E before things and actually get into talking about the technology and actually talk about getting into the legal infrastructure, then as a stakeholder, the government will kind of lose its any kind of influence that it can have, because the private sector isn't going to invest until the government says it's okay to. And if the private sector doesn't invest, then nobody's going to get a job. And if nobody's going to get a job, then all of our JavaScript developers and Python developers and PHP developers are going to work for Dropbox or Google or Facebook or somewhere else. And that's only because there isn't that basic infrastructure at the governmental level to make money for it. There isn't an economy. So if you don't have an economy, you can't expect people to want to work in it. But as a governmental thing, like that's where I think the stakeholder conversation has to start.
Thanks, Agyei. And yes, I see Camille wants to jump in, and maybe Camille, there's a question in the chat that you probably could segue into as well.
Sure.
It's asking, which of the stakeholderisms do you subscribe to in terms of government or any type of these? Do you think there's a role for any one or many of these stakeholders? And I think as you're jumping in now, perhaps you're gonna address some of that in any event.
That is a very painful question. I'll do my best to answer it because I've been doing this for 20 years, right? Trying to get those same stakeholders to recognize the value of the digital economy, for digital enterprise in a whole. I think we recently started seeing digital service as, something of value that started to happen, yes. But from where I stand and the experience of over the 20 years, I will agree with Keron. I will agree that we cannot look in if we want to really be financially successful on that level. We cannot only look in, we have to look out of Trinidad and Tobago. And this is where, to try to answer that question as much as possible, where probably the stakeholders could come in. But we cannot, in my 20 years experience on this island, since I've been back, we cannot totally depend on. So there has to be some codependence. So I'll give you an example. With the studio, Full Circle Studio, we would, a lot of our jobs coming through external studios. So there's, like Keron, there's no issues of money coming in, but there's of US coming in, but there of course are huge issues of US going out. So we have to find a way to fix that, because if loads of US coming in, what is the problem? And these sort of economies, gaming is a multi-billion, and I know of gaming, small gaming studios here who are bringing in US dollars, endless US dollars, right? So if we're seeing that this is actually bringing in the foreign exchange that you have put up there as part of your pillar, that these small organizations supposed to be bringing in US, then this is where the stakeholders should come in and say, well, okay, what can we do to fix this situation? The other thing to add to that regarding the collaboration and the stakeholders, I'll give you a quick example. For Anime Caribe last year, it was our 90th anniversary. Tracy, we're celebrating 20 years this year, not 19. So in our 90th anniversary, we had the huge issue of not getting the funding that we normally get for COVID, because of COVID, and also because of the fragmentation. People weren't, in the same space. But what we had to do was literally create a system of, and this was thinking on our feet, a system of a digital cooperative, which is what we termed it. A digital cooperative where we had people who were doing AR, people who were doing VR, people who were doing animation, gaming, web, you name it. And we all came together and used the Anime Caribe platform as a way to promote ourselves. We had about 12 small micro enterprise, digital enterprise. And out of that, we were able to pull our resources, and because we had to go online, our audience increased by 500%. And that is because those digital heads came together and said, you know what, let us share that 500% growth, and we all did. So it really is about thinking outside the box. And I will agree with Agyei. Some people will probably have to leave the planet for some changes to happen. But I do feel that in our own way, you know, in what we do, and what I do, and what Keron does, and what Agyei does, and what Tracy does, we could start to make those changes, because I could tell you, I could attest to it, that I am seeing the changes, and I'm seeing the changes in, for instance, our students. Keron could tell you, I brought Keron to meet my students, and he saw the kind of work that those students were doing. So there are ways to fix these issues. I do feel we just need to pull our heads together and not ignore the government and ignore the stakeholders, but to find a way to collaborate with them, with or without them.
Thank you, Camille. And I saw there's a discussion that has started in the chat about capital and venture capital and financing, and that's the private sector stakeholder coming into the picture there. I even saw the phrase vulture capitalism being used by one of our participants, Glenn. I don't know if Roxanne, I think you've opened up your mic, maybe you want to jump in and speak to that, and perhaps Keron, maybe that's something that you may want to talk about in terms of the private sector role in this whole thrust towards digital entrepreneurship. Roxanne?
Yeah, so let me say that we have to look at this thing. There's no one solution. We have to look at it on a spectrum, right? We are at different, and the digital enterprise is in its infancy stage in Trinidad and Tobago, right? But there's some things, some areas, some sectors that are a couple steps ahead. And so when we're talking about, you know, the involvement of the multi-stakeholder, we have to look at it on that spectrum. So I'll tell you, in our going forward, in our pivoting last year and starting up Shop Caribe, which is this online shopping platform for Caribbean-made things, we had to do all sorts of quick steps. So Agyei is talking about, okay, do you have to use FAC? Do you, can we lean on WePay? Are the banks ready? The banks aren't ready. The banks aren't interested, right? I mean, and it was a pivotal moment for the world. So they were all caught up in a whole tailspin. I'll tell you, we spent probably the better half of 6 months back and forth with the bank until we had to find our own solutions, until we had to, take a piece from here, take a piece from there, and make it work. This spectrum that I'm talking about has, at all levels of it, there are government institutions that are well-meaning, but they just don't understand. Just as Archer was saying, they just don't understand what we're talking about now. There are organizations that are focused on, and their main role is to give grant funding, and they still don't understand it. So what I'm saying is, this spectrum we're talking about, we have to now, I feel, identify key stakeholders, key people in the ministries that we have to work with, that we have to kind of, I don't know if it's an activity that comes out of this agency, TTIGF, but find some key things that we want to hold on to. That payment gateway thing is a critical. If we are to do anything out here, accessing a payment gateway has to be made easier. We have a fantastic relationship with FAC, so we've been able to get through. And that leans on what I was saying about collaboration. If anybody needs that kind of support, working with FAC, I can help you there, right? The spectrum also has things like, okay, animation. Animation, as Camille has rightly said, it's the better part of 19 years. Now, the normal person would say, but a 19-year-old is a grown-up. A 19-year-old is an adult. And you know what? No, it's still in its embryonic stage. It's still developing. We have studios who are doing well, but you still don't have enough of government saying, you know what? That's a pillar. We're going to focus on that. We're going to invest into that. The venture capital comment is valid. Many, many years ago, we had the Venture Capital Incentive Program, which was tasked with, finding projects that you could invest properly into, and I note my comment, properly into, and get them to fly, get them to get to the next level. So that's another element on the spectrum. That funding critically has to be there. that grant funding. You know, are we going to look at a digital enterprise as just a normal business, just with the word digital in front? Because I'll tell you, many of the banks, they ask for the same things. They ask for financial statements for the last 3 years. They ask for profitability. They ask for, you know, directors. They ask for beneficiary. You know, you name it. They ask for it. But is it that we want digital enterprises to be slightly different? What do we want? You know, and I think if we are able to craft some sort of a key bullet points that we want to step out there to these key stakeholders and say, this is what we want to enable this digital environment. We're talking about digital entrepreneurship. Yes, you want people to be able to say, okay, you know, I've gotten this training, I have this kind of experience, I have this knowledge, I have this expertise, I want to do A, B, and C, right? But the hurdles are that they judge us just like they would judge a big conglomerate. They ask you for the same things. And so what do we want? You know, do we want to be assessed differently? You know, I'll tell you that this new economy that we're moving into here needs us to be fast. It needs us to be agile. It needs us to be, you know, on point with a lot of things, but we have to come back to some basic tenets. And I can see it, you know, some of the digital companies are small. They're small teams, very small teams. So when you need to have, you know, accounts worked out and strategic plans worked out and succession plans worked out, that may be, you know, challenging. So we maybe have to come back to some kind of cooperative operations. You know, Camille mentioned about that project that we did for Anime Caribe Festival last year, where it was at least 8 different entities coming together for a purpose, right? Cooperating and providing and collaborating with our resources to one end. But I would love to see us come up with some sort of a plan, step by step, as to what we want, where we want government to help us, where we want government to fall in. On our shopping, we found that, yes, people are buying, but then we're met with duties and taxes. Products out of Trinidad and Tobago are met with duties and taxes in other countries. So it is, we're a digital enterprise, but we're still being, you know, we have the real hardcore business things to still deal with.
But I think that is one more concrete action that seems to be coming out of this discussion, some sort of cooperative platform, some sort of shared learning, shared experiences environment. And I think that maybe that's something that we could take note of as TT Mag and maybe those who are on this meeting and those who are watching. So over to Keron. Keron, I'm trying to add more load to your to your response. A question also just came in. If you look at the chat, you'll see it's asking about intellectual property theft and what is the role of the entrepreneur and this, I guess, the stakeholders in something like that. So I know I threw on you the idea of venture capital and what's going on there, the private sector. And now we have this question about what do we do about theft of intellectual property or theft of your business ideas in this space. Thoughts on that, Keron?
I'll try to keep it short so we can move on to the next. I know time is running low already. But one of the things that I would love to see the stakeholders do is, so, okay, for me, I've had the pleasure of, I grew up in Canada. I lived there for 29 years. I've only been in Trinidad a couple of years. One of the things that the majority of my friends back in Canada look at me for is the fact that you can live in the Caribbean, work remotely, and cost of living is 10 times cheaper here. And it allows me to experiment in ways that I could never do in Toronto simply because cost of living is so much higher. I thought what Mia Motley did with Barbados in inviting remote workers to Barbados from countries like the US, I thought was brilliant. And I was waiting for the Caribbean chorus to start saying, hey, well, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to offer you a 1-year visa, companies because everybody's working remotely. And if you're here, even if you're sending money back to the States, you still have to spend a percentage of your money here because you're living here. So if we could open up that same lane and start inviting remote workers, because what you'd see online is there's a lot of discussions for where's the best place for digital entrepreneurs to base themselves. So like you'll hear Bali come up a lot. And why does Bali come up? Bali comes up because, again, cheaper cost of living. If all I need is my laptop and an internet connection, again, we are luckily to be in a place where it is so much cheaper to live in Trinidad than it is in most of these countries in the world. So I would love to see the government go down that route of starting to invite remote workers to come live here, rolling out the red carpet for digital entrepreneurs to come here, base themselves here. And that would automatically start to bring in some foreign exchange. And also we would just be able to fraternize with people who are doing bigger and better things. Because, if I see Tracy sometimes in Starbucks, there's a lot of people I've met in Starbucks who that's just a common meeting ground. And just simply seeing somebody from the digital space and sitting down and having that chat, you don't know what opportunities can roll up. So if we're getting that kind of talent to come in and just be within the fabric of our community, that will just start to help us as well. Another thing I would love to see is the governments, even if we're not creating the technology, I would at least like to see the governments reaching out to, I'm just throwing this out there, but reach out to an Amazon, see what kind of company we can get to bring some sort of operations in the country, provide them a tax break, see if we can get them to employ local people, but you have to bring in somebody, bring in a company, bring in somebody who is doing something, get them here so that we can start to generate more foreign exchange for ourselves. And another thing I would really, really love to see is companies like an FAC, WePay, start to push the education, right? So they know exactly what it takes to get onboarded. The banks know what it takes to get onboarded, but none of the companies put forth any sort of education or back education to teach people the proper processes to not just get onboarded, but after we've given you a gateway, bring in experts to teach us what we can do. There's a lot of things we can do with FAC, WePay as is. But again, most of us who are now getting into digital entrepreneurship don't know. The banks, JM&B does a great job at, if you are having any issues receiving PayPal funds, they do their best to solve whatever the issue is you're having, but they don't speak about it. You will not see that they are one of the only banks that you could even use to connect with PayPal to receive that money, which I think is huge for anybody who wants to be a digital entrepreneur and wants to utilize some of the platforms online. With respects to intellectual property, there are lawyers here who specialize in intellectual property. You have people like Celise Haynes, Carla Paris, Aquila, and I forget her last name, but there's a few lawyers that are out online constantly talking about intellectual property and protecting it. You can follow them online and start to reach out to them to ask basic questions, because again, that's one of the key things you're going to need to be able to protect yourself. I can't speak to it. However, I can point you in the direction of the experts who can guide you on it. So you can go ahead and follow Celise Haynes, Carla Paris. They do a great job of talking about protecting your intellectual property in the digital age. And yeah, I think we can move on.
Well, thank you, Keron. And I'd just like to quickly, I see Dev has his hand up, so I'm going to go to Dev in a moment, but just address that question about governments bringing in, what has been called anchor tenants in the past and whatever you want to call them now. As many of you on this discussion, Camille, Roxanne may be aware as well, those things have been, I guess they've been half measures. So we've seen, I'm personally aware of quite a few attempts being made by government to brought in Google and Facebook they've been here, they've seen Tamina, for example, they've done the thing, but it needs to be taken beyond a technocrat level and taken up at a high political level, and that's obvious. I think Camille will be able to express that, and even in her field, they've brought in firms and larger companies to look at Trinidad and Tobago, and maybe there's been some success there. So we'll leave that to have Camille address when she comes in next. But Dev, go ahead and let me see what Devanan would have to say. Devanan?
Right. Hi, great panel discussion, Devanan here. A question from the YouTube chat from Zetmeister. His question is, do you think successful digital entrepreneurs could come together to form a banking entity that will provide their banking needs, but also a type of funding needed for other digital entrepreneurship? That's the question.
Did the panel get that? Is it clear? Is the question clear? And if so,
Yeah,
does someone want to take it?
Clear to me.
All right, Agyei, go ahead. Yes, look like you want to take it.
Answer to the question is speak to the central bank. But yeah, that would be nice. That would be lovely if we could do that. There's been a lot of theoretical conversations about models for that happening, but that needs to get approved by a guy in the central bank who probably needs to do his job as soon as possible.
Is there anyone else who may want to address it? Keron, Camille, Roxanne, or you want to leave that alone for the moment? I think we're leaving it alone. And Camille, maybe that's I could move on to you. So I sort of kind of teed you up for a discussion on Tamina and what's been going on with the government and what they've been doing. I think you've been involved for some time with this whole trying to bring the animation sector to life, not just from the standpoint of people exporting their services, which I think is one of the points we're trying to raise here, but also growing the local industry by bringing perhaps again, that anchor tenant word to the table. What's the role of someone like UTT, Tamina, even the IDB and so on in something like this? Any thoughts on that, Camille, based on your experiences?
Yes, and it could be really, really positive. This could be a success, but it means collaborating, and it also means having someone who is very sturdy to deal with what is another nice word to say, politics, but to deal with the politics, because we can't talk about these things without talking about the politics. So it really is a different kind of approach, because you're dealing with different, so the Tamina experience was UTT, Ministry of Planning, IDB, and a few others, and the funding came through that format. The challenge occurred when the bureaucracy came in, right? And then that bureaucracy turned into a web of crazy stuff, but we still got an outcome. And that outcome was the formulation of a outsourcing hub at the new Tamina campus. So, and I just want to share this with the audience, because this is where we need to know that these sort of things are now being made available. And the model for it is not the typical model. And it's because we've battled through the bureaucracy to make sure that it's not the typical model. Roxanne mentioned about 20 years we're doing animation, and that's true. But it's been 17 years of struggle. I'm just being honest, 17 years of very little support. Only the last 3 years, we've started to get that kind of support to put it where it's supposed to be. So understand that it takes, if you look at the animation industry alone, it takes an average of 15 to 20 years of constant investment. And I'm talking on state level and otherwise to really flourish. We've only got that for the past 3 or 4 years. So we're now sort of moving. The Tamina Hub, through that support now, will encompass training, which comes under the UTT, investment, which comes under IDB, and stakeholder support, which comes from the ministries. And this will come from the different ministry, because you would have, at that time, Tracy, it would have been Ministry of Planning, but you also have the Ministry of Trade that would have been there. The idea is that the space is a space that will have access to all of the hardware, software, technical needs, space, digital technology that could support ideas, but also allow our students to feed into a pipeline. So it's been going on for about 3-4 years, this planning stage. By the middle of this year, we should be ready to open. But what I'm saying to all who are here, and I am thoroughly enjoying the conversation going on in the non-panelists. their thoughts and their feedback is just like amazing. You know, we should copy this and keep that somewhere. But the idea is that it is a platform that will allow digital ideas to have a home, right? And we need to make use of that, because I think it's, from my knowledge, it is the first time ever in Trinidad and Tobago and in the Caribbean that we have a place that allows entrepreneurs, whether it's digital, whether it's in film, whether it's in research and development, to have that kind of access. So at the moment, we're working out that, that business model, but anyone out there would have access to students who have the skill sets to support your project. However, these things must be sustainable. So therefore, it's not a free thing, because I do feel often, because we give things away so free, it's not always valued. There must be some kind of investment from you to put that back in. So there's a lot more that's going to come out about this. But what I'm saying is that we've been able to pull all these different elements and create almost a new model that will allow some kind of movement. And everyone on this panel, and even those in the audience, I think, as Roxanne said, if there could be a way where we really collaborate, that is a platform where these kind of things could manifest. And someone said it's a shame it's taken 20 years, but yes, it's taken 20 years to get here.
Well, thank you very much, Camille, for sharing that. And I think that it's important to understand what's been happening, especially with the animation sector, having myself been exposed to that in the very recent past. On that note, I just wanted to ask the panel, in the absence of any specific questions coming in directly from the audience, what areas of digital entrepreneurship do you think are potential centers of excellence for Trinidad and Tobago? And let me explain what I mean by that. So in the education system, we talked about that before. We need to deal with that as a separate issue. That was in the previous panel. But should we be directing our efforts into particular areas where we can, earn foreign exchange in a very real way? So in the very recent past, again, we talked about software development as a broad brush. That's, to be totally frank with you, I think, based on my own experience, that ship has sailed. Many countries are on that boat already. So Trinidad and Tobago coming in, and that as a software development hub is going to be a challenge. But are there specific areas or niches that you think we can jump on board? We talked about animation. We know that's been looked at and has been invested in. And maybe we could discuss it a little further. But are there any specific areas that we can focus on as an entrepreneurship center of excellence, data science, cybersecurity, where we can sell our services and earn foreign exchange? As you know, that this is a digital space is primarily remote based. Do you think that's something that fintech? Do you think that's something that we should focus on? And what areas would you say, as an expert panelist, we should focus on? And let me see who is going to be the first to jump in on that question. Who would want to jump in? Let me see. It doesn't look like anybody's want to take that up.
I'll take it.
Oh,
I'll take it.
Oh, great.
Okay, sorry.
Roxanne,
Great. We'll come back
yes.
to you, gentlemen. But I'll jump in and I'll talk about our shopping platform, and what we're seeing. So, of course, lots of research went into our decision to focus on a shopping platform. And then it was corroborated by something I read from the Digital Economy Report, right? And they're talking about the kind of numbers that since 2017, they're seeing billions and billions of people are looking at buying things online, right? And we all know it. We've all been there, done that. We love Amazon. But we're now seeing a growth where people are looking for things that are special. And so enter Etsy, right? So people are looking for things that are different and special, things that remind them of home. And that's where our research led us to creating Shop Caribe. So the thinking is, how can it help? We're talking about, we've been able to provide an opportunity for hundreds of small entrepreneurs to have an opportunity to sell their products, right? For us, that's a major objective, and it's a major win because now you have people who were displaced as a result of the coronavirus, as a result of the pandemic, who normally would have a brick and mortar store, now have an opportunity to sell their product online. That's one. The other side of it is now, it means that people all over the world have access to products that are made in the Caribbean. And for me, that's a clear other win. When we do our review with our vendors, in terms of their sales to date, they talk about, many of the responses talk about, I've never sold to anybody abroad. And that for them is a fantastic moment. It is, wow, I was at a point where I could not do any business. This thing had crippled me. My shop at the cruise ship complex was closed. My shop at the mall, I had to close it down. And here, this digital platform has provided me with an opportunity to continue plying my trade. So for me, that is win-win. Yes, there are all sorts of things. Yes, our systems are broken to some extent. Yes, we don't have enough government support, but we have to do the things that we can. We have to jump out there and push the envelope on areas that we can. We're seeing mobile money. You know, people are willing to use their credit card to make payments online. And that's a level of financial empowerment that people now have. So there are bits and things that are happening. Yes, there's still a segment of the society that is unbanked. And we've actually done very well working with WePay. I must say, you know, I commend them for taking a step out at a time when, you know how things go in terms of a technology agency company stepping out there in the fintech area. So I say there are elements that we can work with. So we have to work with those elements. And we are, happy to be able to develop and grow and take step by step as we move forward.
Thank you, Roxanne. And yeah, I really think that we need to really take a very close look at exactly what our expertise and where we can really add value and ensure that we don't just jump in at the masses and and contribute in small pieces. We should really be looking for spaces that we can really take the lead and whether it be marketplaces or whether it be offering digital skills and services. I think that's really important. And Agyei, I'm wondering if you had anything further to add to that, or any of the other panelists. You tried to jump in when I was forcing everyone, but what would you like to say?
I think that our shopping app is great. Look it up. But I think that like we created Unqueue. I mean, I have been running a studio that has been putting people online and helping them sell stuff online for like a good minute now, right? And something that we've always had a challenge with was the accessibility of our platform. So it was always that like, you can hire us, but you need like 50 grand to start talking to us. And then like, and then prices kind of move up from there. And while those aren't like, unreasonable rates or anything, it still leaves a huge part of our market out of the conversation when it comes to e-commerce. So we created the system that helps onboard people faster online for less money, right? And I think that that's great. Like, and things like that are nice. Like convenience is, nice. I am not nearly as interested in the potential for digital entrepreneurship helping things like buying sushi, which is what my app, you can order some sushi on Unqueue, and that's great. Like, and I think that that's super like nice, especially now. But I think that when I think about the potential that digital entrepreneurship has, it's on things like, for example, agriculture or government infrastructure. or fisheries, like things that we can help at a real scale. Because I think that when it comes down to technology, it's about scale. I help a lot of people sell stuff, and I'm happy that we help people sell stuff. I'm also happy that we help people buy stuff that they want to buy. But to be honest, if we were to, get a contractor, for example, let's open up like internet on the web. Money on the web in Trinidad. That's a way more, in my opinion, valuable project. So when I think about the potential that digital entrepreneurship has, I think of the problems that we have at the largest scale, and we can solve it with those. So, for example, business registration. We only started doing that online a couple of years ago, and it's still a shit show, And for example, an entrepreneur entering this space and saying, "Here's a solution that we white labeled that you guys can use." That would be amazing, And like I feel like those are the opportunities that we really have for entrepreneurship, because there's so much infrastructure that we have that is dependent on technology that can be improved. And like if we think about I know that the conversation is about like Forex, but I am, as somebody who is capable of generating Forex, I think that the larger challenge is in being able to generate TT dollars in Trinidad for people in Trinidad, especially if we have this giant blocker that the banks have introduced to foreign exchange. But I think that when I think of the opportunities that digital entrepreneurship has, it's really around how can we make like life better and easier, but at the infrastructure level. So of course, there's the opportunities that, for example, Unqueue would bring across. And I think that Unqueue is a good example for, yes, we can use technology to solve problems at scale, but the type of problems that we could be solving, I think, could be a lot more ambitious. I think that we are just starting to scrape the surface of what we can do with technology and digital entrepreneurship, if what we're thinking about is helping people buy sushi. I think that if we stay inside of because I think that when we think about digital entrepreneurship, we think about being the next Amazon or being the next anything that is selling something online, but there's so much else. And I think Keron brought it up as well. Like there's a whole spectrum of work that you can be doing, a whole spectrum of work that needs to happen. And I think that the opportunity for me is there. Like every time I hear one of my friends tell me, "Hey, I just got a job working at this open source company and I'm contributing to technology," I'm like super happy to hear that, Or when one of my friends tells me, "Hey, I got a job at the bank. It's a really unambitious job and I'm still writing PHP, but at least I have a chance to make a change." Those are the kinds of things that I think are important. I think that, and this is, I hope my engagement manager doesn't get mad at me for saying this, but things like Unqueue are, in my opinion, a drop in the bucket relative to the kind of problems that we could be solving.
Yes, and I certainly think we want to, and I do want to challenge that statement you made about the foreign exchange problem, because one of the worst things to happen, and for all apologies to those who are doing this, but we don't want to move online buy and sell, because that trading culture that has, I don't want to get into that because that's a whole different discussion, but we don't want to just migrate that online, and that becomes our entrepreneurship. That'll be the worst thing to happen. So Keron, yourself, Camille, Roxanne, all raised the issue about trying to get online and get earnings, whether it be local or foreign exchange, in other ways, whether it be through services or selling local products, as Roxanne's trying to promote, or local/Caribbean. And I think I want to get to that concrete point. What exactly are the areas that you think that we as a country can excel in? And I'm going to say this because I'm using the carnival thing that's happening now and I guess that's a chaotic and maybe a bit of a fiasco that's going on now. We had an opportunity to do something with this. It was known quite a while in advance, and it appears, from all intents and purposes, that we haven't really, whether it be from the private sector or from the government standpoint, used the opportunity to do something very real with what was happening in terms of, I hate the word virtual carnival, but a virtual carnival or virtual creative showcase that can be earning foreign exchange to some method, I don't know. I'm aware of people who are trying to do something. It's too late now, or maybe too late now. What are your thoughts on these sort of areas, even oil and gas? We have a specialty in oil and gas. How can we sell those services outside of Trinidad and Tobago? What are the areas that we should focus on as entrepreneurs going forward? Keron, I see you have your mic off. Camille as well. Let's, Keron, you went first, so then Camille after. Thanks.
All right, no
Ahead,
problem.
Keron.
So I'm a huge advocate for, you know, keeping things simple. I love what Agyei said, that even though they built Unqueue, he knows that it's a drop in the bucket and we don't just want to just migrate the buy and sell experience online, right? Where we really need to focus on, and what I would like to see, is for us to start exporting culture and start exporting our skill sets. So simple things like being able to have somebody who knows how to cook Caribbean food become digitally savvy to start saying to themselves, well, yo, let me create my ebook, let me go sell that online, let me create a cooking school and use one of the many learning management system platforms like Teachable, Thinkific, Kajabi, and build an online school and earn foreign exchange. If you start thinking about mass from the perspective of, you know, not just bringing people in to come and wine and jam at a fete, but now you have an online school teaching people how to create their own mask costumes. Like, that's a huge way to start earning foreign exchange and expanding the culture. One of the biggest challenges that I've seen this year was the majority of people doing virtual fetes are not digitally savvy. Like, we're not doing virtual events. All we're doing is streaming live concerts that has happened since the dawn of time. That has never changed. That just calling it virtual hasn't changed what has already been happening. When I think of virtual, the first thing that comes to my mind is you are shipping me a package with virtual goggles and some remote sensors, and I'm now interacting in my own room in a virtual world. We're not doing that, right? So we need people to start becoming more digitally savvy. And there was a fete that happened a couple days ago. And basically, I have somebody who is in Europe right now, and they had approached him to sell to the European market. But here was the challenge, and this is why I'm saying that we need people to start becoming more digitally savvy. They wanted him to sell to the European audience, but they wanted him, in order for them to track commissions, they wanted him to take note of everybody's email that he was sending to the platform to purchase tickets. So my friend reached out to me and asked me, he's like, there has to be a better way than doing this, because, you know, I cannot write down 1,000 emails to track commission. And I'm like, well, the easiest thing is affiliate marketing. I'm like, they have a website, they're selling online. Why don't they have an affiliate dashboard and giving you a link where every time that someone clicks on your link, the commission is tracked? And again, when we went back to have the conversation with the promoters, they've never heard of affiliate marketing. So we have people that want to do things virtually, but until we become more digitally savvy and until people start to just learn some of the basics of, you know, doing online business, you know, it's like we want to move forward, but we can't move forward because, well, we just don't have the skill set. And it's not that we can't attain it. You know, we just need people, you know, willing to step out and willing to learn, because a lot of these problems that we're having are already solved, right? Affiliate marketing isn't new. That's already solved. You know, we can earn foreign exchange, but it's just now people to start thinking digital first. And if you are thinking digital first, if you are as big as Tribe or Rogue, there should be an online mass school where you should be enrolling thousands of people every single year to learn how to create tribe costumes, right? And that would probably earn just as much, maybe even more money than you bring in a limited amount of people into the country for Carnival. And the only way you can scale is by increasing the prices, right? Digital allows for scale at large. And if we can start thinking digital first, well, the possibilities are endless. Whatever physical product you are trying to create, think about how you could turn it into a digital product first. And a lot of the times going digital is a whole lot cheaper. The logistics is even better because now we're not actually physically shipping out a physical product. People can download it through a wide variety of ways. But again, it's just now adopting the digital mindset first. And in order to get that digital mindset first, we need people who have found successes, be willing to share their knowledge. Each one teach one, you know, have a blog, put out that kind of content, just enlighten people to show people what is exactly possible, even within the confines of our system. Might not be the best, but there's still so much that we can do.
Yeah, well, brilliant, Keron. I think you've hit the nail on the head. Those are my thoughts on this virtual carnival thing. And I've been trying to convince people that it's not about the experience per se. It's about exactly what I said, creating a sustainable product that can actually have been developed even before February 14 and 15, whatever the days are that they're trying to promote as the virtual carnival day. Camille, over to you. But before I hand over to you, we have 12 minutes left.
Okay.
So I would like to ask you to expound on your point, but we're going to do a wrap up at the same time. So maybe you're the first one to wrap up. So
good.
Respond, and then you can begin the wrap up, and everybody else will have a few minutes to do a,
well, the good thing
final
is
point.
The good thing is that Keron said everything that I wanted to say, but probably nicer, right? So I'll just add to what he said. What we do is we sell our experience whenever we go to international like Kid Screen to sell not just animation. We sell in Trinidad as a digital destiny. You could come here and, experience that. And we sell it as an experience. Whenever we go to these shows, we carry a hashtag with us. I think we underestimate the power of a hashtag, and we constantly use it. We use hashtag outsourcing sunshine, hashtag outsourcing sunshine, hashtag animate in the Caribbean. We walk with that wherever we go. So we sell the hub experience that if we are to bring investors here, not only would you come to the hub to experience that technical thing, but you will experience Trinidad as a destination. So that too is what we do. I want to give a quick experience at Anime Caribe to kind of talk about what Keron talked about, which was superb. It hit the nail on the head. What we need to understand, and what the carnival people need to understand, that they are not experts in the digital media space. They are experts in carnival. So therefore, work with the people who are experts in the digital media. Just because you know of a software doesn't mean that this is what you should do. For Anime Caribe last year, when we pulled our resources, again, young minds, my mind is old. I could only work with young minds. And those young minds came together and they said, all right, let's look into alt space. Alt space is in beta state, but we said, let's dive into it. We designed a three-dimensional space that looked like we were in the Caribbean. And we knew, because we did some tests before, that the older generation, 35 and up, would not really know how to jump in there. So with the people who we wanted to be there, we had some of our students literally take them in the three-dimensional space, into the virtual reality space, because you have the 35s and up that don't want to know, probably even a bit older, maybe about 40 and up. They don't want to know, they don't want to wear this headset, but sometimes you need to take them there. So it was a whole process. Carnival should not be what we're aiming for 2021. What we should be aiming for is 2022 Carnival right now, because it is too late for Carnival 2021 to be a success if you're using digital media, if you're using virtual reality, if you're using that kind of thing. So to wrap up, all I'd say is that we have a bunch of wonderful people here. I am totally distracted by the conversation going on on the side. So I hope that we could, really pull our resources together and make some differences moving forward.
Camille, maybe I could just ask, as you're wrapping up, to give one concrete action you would want to suggest, and that for everyone else, I think that's how we could deal with it.
I think we need to put some concrete ideas down on people, like literally put it down. This is what we're going to do. I would suggest the hub that we're working on in Tamina needs stakeholders like everybody here in the audience. So if that could be, and I'm being selfish here, if we could utilize the hub in that way to support the digital economy and digital entrepreneurs, we are a platform for that.
Do you think co-working would be something that could happen in Tamina?
It is part of the plan, a co-working
Excellent.
space.
Excellent. All right, so let's reverse the order again. Well, half reverse. Roxanne, final thoughts on one concrete action we could take going forward.
Final thoughts. I think that we are on a trajectory. It's a developmental, everything takes time. Everything takes time. With the animation example, It took us, yes, 20 years before people start to, 15 years before they start to actually put animation in a call for proposals. You know, we're looking for visual arts, but we want animation, we want gaming, we want whatever. So everything takes time. That said, we are at a point now, we're still new at the point. This digital enterprise, this digital economy, we're still new at it. That the virtual events, the virtual fests, the virtual parties, we're still new at it. And you know, if last year taught us nothing, it is we have to be kinder to ourselves and the expectations that we have sometimes. Yes, you know, we want things to be moving at a pace. We want government institutions to understand where we're going, and we get frustrated. Yes, of course. So that helps us to, you know, when we detail what we want, it helps us to push these agencies forward. I think that's critical, but we have to remember we're still in a very young state, right? You know, I was involved in one of the virtual fests, and I'll tell you, you're right, just getting everyone on board with what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it, how it will roll out, what the order will be. That is still, you're still convincing people, and you're still not sure what that is supposed to look like. So as we go, as we grow, I say, let's keep pushing forward. Let's make this a start at collaborating, at, you know, again, conversations, calling on people and saying, hey, what are you thinking about this? Can you help me with this? Do you know somebody? Can you, guide me somewhere? So that we can, in this, as this digital economy unfolds, we have the resources. You know, just on this panel, just from the people who are making comments in the group chat, we have resources available to us. We have the knowledge and the expertise right here that we can kind of pull together and make these things actionable. A comment, you know, a long time ago, somebody told me, you know, you're too action oriented. And yes, you know, you have to be action oriented at this point. You have to kind of move, push forward, get to the next level, do the things that you can. Yes, there are some great, big, game-changing, world-changing ideas out there, but we have to, but if you can't achieve those, you do the little things. You color away. You're able to make some change, help lives, help, yeah, things as you go. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Roxanne, for that. And maybe I could ask those in the chat as well to document. The transcript is in fact able to be taken off, so that'd be good. So I'm hoping that we can use the interactivity of the chat to have people put their concrete action ideas, and we can take that forward and perhaps put something together and share it with everyone who came today. Agyei, I won't give you the last word because you may you may take it to a different level, but the second to last word. Final thoughts.
Now I
on
kind of feel like I definitely
action.
need to take it to another level because you kind of pushed me there. But I'm gonna leave it. I do think, like, I spoke a lot about government involvement and it's important, but I also think that on the other side of the spectrum, something that we didn't really talk about is the private sector / entrepreneur / VC relationship. And I think that we are really lucky. Like I was able to bootstrap Unqueue myself, but I mean, an investment bank now owns a quarter of Unqueue because we can't do that the rest of that this year, right? And I think that the only reason they are on board with us is because they know us, like we have a relationship. But I think that generally speaking, there's a lot of difficulty in that kind of access in terms of like, this is a good idea, let's put something behind it. And I think that a lot of that comes with knowledge, ability, and understanding. And Camille made a really good point about talking to the experts. And I think that we've had a really skewed idea of who the experts are in Trinidad for a considerable period of time, because the experts have been traditionally the people who've had the same job for 10 years, but that isn't actually expertise, that's just experience. And I think that the reality is that like, we need to reframe who knows what they're talking about when we're talking about digital entrepreneurship. It shouldn't be the person who has a good job somewhere. It really should probably be the person who's likely failed like 3 startups. Like that's who I would look for to probably lead the conversation. Somebody who's done a bunch of startups and had all of them just die because of one reason or the other, because they probably know really well what not to do next time. But I just think that we're not looking in the right places for the answers that we need fundamentally. And I think that until we start doing that, we'll be in trouble. Yes, government, all of that, but fundamentally, even those people in government need to ask who is actually the person to talk to about this? Is it my friend's nephew or is it a Google search? And relatively speaking, we typically pick the friend's nephew when we should be doing the Google search.
That was pretty tame. I thought you were going to really amp it up with something, but no, okay, fair enough. So Keron, you have to amp it up now. Last word, concrete actions and last thoughts.
So what I want is for people to hold themselves accountable, because the reality is that the government is not going to save you. Nobody is coming to save you. Even within the confines of our system right now, you can go online, learn a skill. We have the tools to get paid, and you don't ever have to step foot in an office again and still make more than the majority of the highest income earners here in Trinidad and Tobago. You have to be the one to want that for yourself, though. We have everything we need to become self-reliant and not have to rely on the government to give us jobs or to provide jobs. We can do that for ourselves. So I want people to start getting okay with using Google. And Agyei just took the words out of my mouth, because again, a lot of the experts we assume are experts because of the positions they've had are not the people that should be leading the charge. They're also not the people you should be going to ask questions. Start with that Google search, because again, a lot of the information that we need is there. We just need to look for it. Next, I want people to build their skill set. If you can build your skill set, Google high income skills, build your skill set and start to build your portfolio. You can now tap into the global network of clientele. You are no longer limited to clients in Trinidad. You're not limited to clients in the Caribbean. You can easily build a website. You can easily do copywriting. You could easily be a VA for somebody in Japan, in India, in the US, all at the same time, and start to make money from all different aspects of the world. You can do that. And I just want people to be okay with saying to themselves, you know what, I might not be too digitally savvy, but I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to try, even if it's, you know, something small. Just start, because we have the tools. We just need more people to hold themselves accountable and say, you know what, nobody is coming to save me. So let me step up and let me see what I can do on my own, build my brand, build my name, put myself out there and start to earn. You can do that.
Just wait, Keron, that's it. Just waiting to see if there's any more. Okay, excellent. So I think we've had an excellent panel today with some concrete suggestions. I see some coming in the chat. Let's all not leave this as another talk shop and, you know, another one of those conferences we've been to and had a chat and then move on with our own lives and not get back together at some point and compare notes where we are. I really think it's a good opportunity for us to work together as a community, as a country, to push this agenda forward. I'd like to thank Camille, Roxanne, Keron, Agyei, and all the people who have joined us today in kind of moving this agenda forward. I really believe this is the way out of our economic crisis that we are going to be facing in this year. I don't know if you heard, but GE just announced that they are going to be moving their vehicles to electric in 2035. Oil and gas is dead. Oil and gas is dead. Every time the government sees the oil price goes up, I know that from very close experience, that things just change in the direction they were heading. They were going digital in one time, and then the oil price went back up, and then they switched again back to oil and gas and left digital in the gutter. They're back on digital again. Let's see what happens going forward. It's dead. It's a dead industry. It's dying. Let's say it's dying. So we need to look at the next way forward. Green economy, blue economy, but certainly digital economy. There are ways that we can take this forward. As Keron and all of everybody has said today, it's the barriers to entry are extremely low. Extremely low. It just takes a little bit of effort to go and do some research, skill up, understand where your niche is, where your skills are. As I told people in the past, if you can do something, go on YouTube and experiment, showcase what you can do. You can cook, you can make a kite. I don't know, whatever it is you can do. Begin building your brand, as Keron just said. Begin building your portfolio. You never know what's going to happen. There's a guy on Udemy. I don't want to, maybe I shouldn't call his name. His first name is Emile, who has been making a killing by doing a very niche area of training. He has 40,000, I think, students. And if you know Udemy's pricing, you can kind of make an extrapolation as to how much money is made on Udemy. There are many ways you can do this. So do not see this as being your, I saw somebody said baby steps and so on. Yes, there are baby steps, but the baby steps can be significant baby steps. You can take longer baby steps than crawling or short steps. Let's go forward together and let's turn the economy around. And I'm not being, I don't want to exaggerate here, simply by doing this. I think it's really important. We all have the opportunity, we all have the ability. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 entrepreneurs at least who have done it already, and then I'm sure many more in the chat who are doing it, who have done it already. Let's take in front and move forward together. Thank you very much for coming together today and for contributing and for participating.